Lately, watching the news is almost the same as watching a horror show. The things we're about to share with you in today's video may be weird, some can make you laugh, and others are simply infuriating, but they all point to the same conclusion. From the very top to the very bottom, America is going insane. We have truly become a brainless society, and while our country goes from bad to worse, most people remain unaware of our true problems. That's why we have gathered some simple but revealing examples of just how nonsensical things have become in our country. Without further ado, here are 15 examples that show how completely and utterly insane our society has become. We like to think of America as the land of opportunity, a place where anyone can achieve the American dream. But what about the dreams of our children? The American dream is quickly becoming an American nightmare for millions of kids. The United States ranks 24th out of 26 developed nations for child well-being. 1 in 6 children in America faces financial problems. Millions of American kids are going to bed hungry tonight. We're failing our children, and that's a stain on our national conscience. Let's talk about sex, baby, or at least the lack of proper sex education in this country. Among developed nations with reliable statistics, the U.S. takes home the gold medal for the highest teen pregnancy rate. For every 1,000 teenage girls between 15 and 19 years old, 57 are pregnant at any given time in America. Our current approach to sex education, which often seems to involve just awkwardly mumbling about condoms for a few minutes in health class, simply isn't working. We need to have honest, open, and comprehensive conversations about sex and relationships with our young people. Remember books? Those rectangular things with pages filled with words? Apparently, a significant chunk of American teenagers don't. A recent study found that a third of them haven't touched a book in the past year. Meanwhile, 45% of U.S. teenagers are basically surgically attached to the internet. We're raising a generation that's more familiar with the latest TikTok dance craze than with classic literature. This isn't just about books, folks. It's about the death of critical thinking, the decline of attention spans, and the rise of a generation that gets all of its information from memes and influencers. The United States, a land overflowing with abundance, where grocery stores are temples of excess, and yet many go to bed hungry every night. 1 in 8 families struggles with hunger. Over 51 million Americans live in poverty. They work tirelessly, yet can't put food on their tables. This is a systemic failure, not just personal responsibility, a gaping wound on a nation that prides itself on prosperity. Our agricultural system is a marvel of modern technology, churning out an abundance of food. Yet we treat this bounty with reckless disregard, tossing out nearly 40% of our food supply every year. Imagine a giant conveyor belt piled high with food, and every third item gets casually flicked into a bottomless pit. We waste a staggering 1.4 billion tons of food annually. That's enough to feed millions of people, yet it ends up rotting in landfills, generating harmful greenhouse gases. This isn't just environmentally disastrous, it's morally reprehensible. While families struggle to put food on the table, we're throwing away enough to feed a small nation. This is about a broken system that prioritizes profit over people and the planet. America, land of the free, home of the brave, and the undisputed heavyweight champion of obesity. A whopping 71% of men and 62% of women in America are either overweight or obese. We're in the midst of a public health crisis, fueled by a toxic combination of sedentary lifestyles, sugar-laden diets, and a culture that often glorifies excess. This isn't just about vanity, folks. Obesity is linked to a whole host of serious health problems, including heart disease, stroke, type 2 diabetes, and certain types of cancer. We need to start prioritizing our health and well-being, both for ourselves and for future generations. Let's talk about television, that glowing rectangle that sucks up our free time like a black hole. The average American will spend an astonishing 78,000 hours glued to the boob tube over their lifetime. Think about all the things you could accomplish in 78,000 hours. You could learn a new language, write a novel, or finally get around to cleaning out that creepy crawl space in your basement. But instead, we're collectively choosing to spend a significant portion of our lives passively absorbing whatever mindless drivel is being beamed into our living rooms. It's time to turn off the boob tube, folks, and start engaging with the real world. The American dream, that shimmering mirage of home ownership, financial security, and a two-car garage. But for millions of Americans, that dream has become a nightmare, a crushing burden of debt that hangs over their heads like a financial guillotine. The average American is currently carrying a whopping $92,727 in consumer debt. And as a nation, we owe a mind-boggling $16 trillion in all forms of consumer debt. We're essentially living paycheck to paycheck, drowning in a sea of interest rates and late fees. This is a systemic problem fueled by stagnant wages, rising costs of living, and a culture that encourages us to live beyond our means. America is a land of opportunity where anyone can strike it rich if they just work hard enough. But the reality is far more sobering. The gap between the rich and the poor is wider than a canyon. The wealthiest 1% own more wealth than the bottom 90% combined. This isn't just unfair. It's a threat to our democracy. America's infrastructure is like a once stately mansion that's been neglected for decades. The roof is leaking, the foundation is crumbling, and the plumbing is one flush away from disaster. Nearly 10% of all bridges in the U.S. are structurally deficient and in desperate need of repair or replacement. And it's not just bridges. Our roads are riddled with potholes, our airports are outdated and overcrowded, and our public transportation systems are woefully inadequate. We're essentially living in a giant game of Jenga, and it's only a matter of time before the whole thing comes crashing down. The United States, the land of opportunity, the beacon of hope for the world, and yet we have the highest rate of poverty of any other developed country. The overall U.S. poverty rate stands at a shameful 17.8%, while the average for other developed countries is below 10%. Millions of Americans are trapped in a cycle of poverty, struggling to afford basic necessities like food, housing, and health care. This isn't just a personal failing, folks. This is a systemic problem fueled by low wages, lack of affordable housing, and a social safety net that's riddled with holes. We need to do better, America. We need to create a society where everyone has the opportunity to thrive, not just survive. Walk down any street in a major American city and you're likely to encounter them, the invisible people, the forgotten souls who call the streets their home. The United States has the dubious distinction of having the highest rate of homelessness among developed nations. On any given night, approximately 1.5 million people sleep on the streets in America. These aren't just faceless statistics, folks. These are human beings, our fellow citizens, who have fallen on hard times. We need to address the root causes of homelessness, provide adequate, affordable housing, and offer comprehensive support services to those in need. The United States, the self-proclaimed land of the free, has a dirty little secret. We also have the largest prison population in the entire world. There are currently over 2.2 million people behind bars in America, representing nearly 22% of the total global population of inmates. We incarcerate a larger percentage of our population than any other country on earth, including authoritarian regimes like China and Russia. This isn't justice, folks. This is mass incarceration, and it's a stain on our national conscience. We need to rethink our approach to criminal justice, address the root causes of crime, and invest in rehabilitation and reintegration programs. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, endowed with certain unalienable rights. Among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. These words are the bedrock of American identity. But somewhere along the way, we lost sight of their true meaning. America's freedom of the press and speech are under attack. The U.S. ranking has plummeted to 42nd out of 180 nations. Journalists are being harassed, intimidated, and jailed for doing their jobs. This is not the America I grew up in. Remember that thing called the Constitution? You know, that little document that outlines the fundamental rights and freedoms of every American citizen? Well, it seems like a lot of Americans could use a refresher course. A recent survey found that at least half of Americans don't even know all 5 freedoms guaranteed by the First Amendment. 1 in 5 people couldn't even identify the Bill of Rights when asked. We're talking about basic civics here, folks, the kind of stuff you should have learned in elementary school. This isn't just embarrassing, it's dangerous. When we're ignorant of our own rights, we're more likely to have those rights eroded. Ladies and gentlemen, this is how bad things have gotten in the United States. Our society has been turned upside down, and our nation has become a giant, grotesque circus, complete with clowns, acrobats, and a never-ending parade of elephants in the room that no one wants to acknowledge. The only question is, when the music stops and the lights come on, will we be ready to face the consequences of our collective inaction?